So the live stream computer is different than this computer, so he said we could go ahead and start. And if they're watching online, they can get this and the class. It's called a twofer. Yeah. Okay. I'd like for y'all to meet Larry Lanning. He's visiting again with us tonight, saying that nobody wants to come to his class. They leave town just so they don't have to come. But we'll start. Is Lynette home, or is she still in Ohio? Okay. So only a day late. Did she get her mom situated? Okay. All right. Her mom is at home. Okay. Nice. She's home too. Yeah. Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. Life is old there. Jean's up and walking. Did you bring your sticks? You walked in without your sticks? Wow. Do you want me to have Clark play that back? You heard it? You got it on your phone? Okay. Still the laundry mat. Do you take quarters? No. Okay. I talked to Kathy around midday. Bobby has some improvement. If you didn't see the email, he had I don't know how much I'm supposed to say, but he had an emergency situation. He's been in ICU. So more prayers, but progress. I don't know that they have a treatment plan yet. They've just been getting him stabilized, and that's what's happened. So I was going to go visit, and she said, why don't you wait another day? He's not all alert yet. So I haven't heard anything this afternoon. There could have been all kinds of things happen this afternoon. And then who else? Shirley, keep praying. She's sending out applications for a new place. Let's hope one of them sticks and she gets that. But she's still okay for the moment. Larry, since you're a visitor, and I won't always get this chance, you want to lead word our prayer tonight? Thank you. Kaylee asked me to do that. Amen. 1 Timothy 4. We're going to start in verse 11. This is one of those moments where I wish the Bible had punctuation. Because punctuation tells you a lot, doesn't it? And so verse 11 starts with this sentence. Command and teach these things. And our Bible puts a period there. What other possible punctuation marks could work there. That would help us understand what's happening here. 11. Command and teach these things, period, is how we do it. Andy, you got a wry smile. Could be a comma. I was thinking a colon, right? But comma is the same track, right? Because what do we not know about the period? Is he talking about the 10 verses that came before? And he says, command and teach these things. And now he's going in our way of doing things, into a new paragraph. Or is he starting the new paragraph with command and teach these things, colon, and here they are. I tend to think he's talking about what he's just talked about.
Seems like the way they've done it here is trying to suggest it's about what's coming up.
Exactly. And how have they done that?
Putting the beginning of the first sentence of the new paragraph.
Yes.
Applies to this new paragraph, not the previous.
And in some Bibles, you're going to have what I would call a chapter heading, right? You're going to have a comment on what's coming after. And so I don't know which one it is, but the original language didn't have the punctuation mark. They didn't have the separation between the words. They just strung them all across. And probably when I was younger, I would not have said I was a fan of punctuation, because you had to learn how to use it right, and I still not that great at it. But Denise is, so that helps a lot. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a group at my work that has a logo that they made up. Their slogan at the bottom is a simulation group, and it says virtually everything works. So they mean virtually, simulation, everything works, or some things work, others don't. Ending with the best. There's no punctuation here.
That,
not everything works, but not everything.
there's a road sign in Texas that says, hitchhikers may be escaping convicts. So do I stop and pick them up and help them get away from the convicts? Or are they the convicts? I need to know this stuff. And so it is important, but fortunately, knowing that or not knowing that really doesn't change what's happening here. So let's go on to verse 12. Let no one despise you for your youth. Or some versions may have the word young, right? Don't be despised. What does NIV say? Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young. And so what does that mean? How was Timothy that Paul was saying, don't let anybody look down on you, young man? In our context, how old would that be? If I ask you, how old is youth? What would you say? Teenager, right here. 18 or 21, somewhere in there. Fight but not drink. Yeah? Oh, you're expanding it all the way to 30? That wouldn't have been true in our culture till very long ago. We wouldn't have said people that were out of college they're young, but they're not youth. Somebody else? Jim, what's your idea of somebody who's young? There you go. You know some people that should know better that are, yeah. Well, and I've discovered that number keeps getting higher. As my number gets higher, that number of who's young gets higher, right? Last week, Clark kind of spilled his beans. How did he think Timothy was? Anybody hear it? He said it last week. 20. And that would fit our narrative, right? What it means to be young. Somebody 20, well, yeah, that's pretty young. Well, in this culture, somebody could be a youth all the way up to 40 years old. Would you call somebody 40 a youth? Probably not how we typically use that language. I guess if you're 80, 40 is pretty young, right? And there are several different sources. One guy said 30 is the first stage of a man's age and extends to 40, as I will admit. Or Josephus once called a 40-year-old man a youth. So, in that day and time, it might have meant something a little different than the way we would take it. And the only important thing about that is as we read what Paul says next, we're not just thinking of somebody that's young, green, and totally inexperienced, right? You'd hope somebody who is 35, 40 years old, because they can now qualify to serve as president of the United States, right? 35 is the minimum age. That they're not necessarily green and inexperienced. So what I'm pointing out is here, Paul is not instructing Timothy because he hasn't had enough time to have some experience, but he is laying into a way of thinking that says you respect your elders. You expect those who have lived longer than you, right? Is that still appropriate? Even in a culture that kind of fantasizes about being young and staying young, and, well, there are benefits to not being as young as you once were. And there's some that probably wouldn't count as benefits. But Paul is clear what he's expecting of Timothy, whether he's 20 or 40, okay? And Timothy has a charge here. So remember, this whole book is to Timothy, and he's been laying out some of the things and structures that he wants. And this, to me, seems to be a very personal part of the letter. When he says, let nobody despise you, Timothy, but here's what I expect. Set the believers an example. So what's the other side of the coin? You don't get to go, oh, I was young, I didn't know what I was doing, right? The expectation from Paul was, you be the example. And why would Paul tell him that? Well, maybe it was very needed. They needed in Ephesus at this moment to be a leader, somebody who would step up and be the example of how he was supposed to live. And he said, Timothy, it's you. Don't let being on the young side hold you back. And let's just look at the way he focuses Timothy. How is he to be an example in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, in purity? Now, it's not a list of right there of things to not do, right? He's telling Timothy to be very proactive. Consider the way you talk, the way you conduct your affairs. Until I come, verse 13, devote. Not do this once a week. He says be devoted to it. Devotion's a big ask, isn't it? And what's he to be devoted to? Public reading of the scripture, to exhortation. What in the world is that? Clark's not here, you have to answer. Encouraging. You're younger. What's part of your role? Encouraging people. Who should be good at that? Well, the older should be. They should have had practice, experience. They should be able to see things in those that are younger and encourage that. But Timothy, probably because it wasn't happened to a great degree, you're going to have to step into that. And to teaching. Do not neglect the gift you have. And so he's not just choosing Timothy because sometimes how we choose people, well, he's related to me. Or he's loyal. You know, you've heard the phrase loyalty test. That's not what Paul's saying here. He's saying, you have a gift, and I expect you to use it. How good are you at seeing gifts that other people have? I hope you're good. And I hope when you see it, you encourage it. Right? You see somebody do something, and you say, keep doing that. That's part of that exhortation, right? You see, and gift doesn't mean they know everything. It does not. So yesterday was an interesting day because Finley had entertained the idea of playing soccer, and so I called Greene County and I found out that they'd already closed soccer signups. I'm like, what? Your season doesn't start till the end of August. He said, but she can still sign up. I just closed the public part of it. But by the way, there's an evaluation tonight. Do you think she could be there? So she was. And y'all have all been around Finley. She didn't she's never played soccer. I mean, we went out in the yard and played for an hour. And it was hot. But she didn't shy away. Right? When the guy said kick the ball, she kicked the ball. They were doing this little scrimmage, and they were, she'd kick it and it would just go down there. And the guy said, hey, kick it to a teammate. Every time after that, she kicked it to a teammate. Right? But the best one was, Denise and I were sitting up on this little hillside, and she was 2 fields over, and they were lining up. The guy was rolling out the ball, and you ran up and you kicked it in the goal. I mean, there was no goalie, and it was the biggest goal they had. I don't know how you missed. Some did. But I saw her lining up over there, waiting to take her turn. Now, I couldn't hear her, of course. She was too far away. But I could see her turning to the girl right after her going, because the girl talks with her hands, right? She was being herself. We said if anybody needs to play a team sport, it's this girl, right? Now, the only challenge is to help her understand she's not the coach, right? Help her stay in her lane a little bit. But she'll be an encouragement. She'll she'll talk to the other teammates. They'll work together. And I try to find ways, Denise tries to find ways that we can encourage that, right? Because that's her gift. That's what Paul's doing here for Timothy. Notice verse 15, though, he has a gift, but it doesn't mean he doesn't have to put anything into it. Because how does verse 15 start? Practice. What? Yeah. NET says practice. Be diligent. Keep after it. So, because my girls went to a little volleyball, a little Christian school, they played volleyball. They're all short. They were never going to play volleyball at a big school or anything, right? But they all got opportunity. And Sarah, our middle daughter, she wanted to be a server. And she was strong. She was fairly athletic. But we had a house, the front was, ground level, and the back it went down 3 or 4 feet. And so it had a crawl space under it that was about 2.5 feet high. It made that brick wall in the backyard higher. And she would get out there for hours and just whomp, 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 catch it, whomp, 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 whomp. And it was just that over and over and over again. And they went up to McKinney a couple years later, and they played a team that was better than them. Bigger girls, faster girls, bigger school. But McKinney lost. And one of the reasons was they could not return Sarah's serve. I watched her score 15 straight points in a match. They could not. Now, did that happen every game? No, but why did it happen at all? She was diligent. She practiced. She had some talent there. And what did she do? She kept at it. She made it better. So hear those words of encouragement to Timothy. And we hear those same things. You have NIV, Larry? Read the whole verse 15. Okay. Here's what the NET says. It says the same thing, but a little different words that I really like. Practice these things. Immerse yourself in them so that all may see your progress. If you practice and you just immerse yourself. How many of you know a second language? Más o menos. Is it Spanish? It's German. You can say some words. Some phrases. Yeah. Can you stand up and preach a whole sermon in German? No, not there yet. What would it take for that to probably happen? Immersion. Right? Yeah. If you went to Germany for 6 months and you didn't speak any English, you think your German might come back a little bit better? Yeah. So when a missionary goes onto a mission field, most of the time where they're at, they're not speaking English. And so what's the first task of being in that place? Learn the language, and they do it immersively. They have class every day. They're living. They're going to the grocery store. They got to figure out how to navigate. One of the best ways for missionaries, though, is to have kids on the mission field, because they grow up speaking two languages. In fact, our friends that went to Peru, there were two little girls that just grew up speaking Spanish, one from each family, and they were kind of embarrassed when their parents talked, because, they didn't sound like they were from around here. Immersion. He's not telling Timothy, hey, you're lucky, you have a gift, just sit back and let it roll. Verse 16, keep a close watch on yourself and on the teaching. Don't let it go to your head. Don't think you know everything. Don't think you're the only one. Persist in this. It's not just a one-time thing. For by doing so, you will save both yourself and your hearers. There's a lot of good stuff in that little short, directed at Timothy, but we overhear it, and if we're listening, we pick up some things that apply to us, right? So let's go now to chapter 5. We're making progress. I didn't stay in chapter 4 for like 7 weeks like we did with, was that chapter 2 or 3 we did that with? It was 2, right? Yeah, you remember it. It was painful, wasn't it? Okay, chapter 5. So here's again, I love pointing these out, where translation becomes a problem. Because I'm going to read chapter 5, verse 1, just the first part. Do not rebuke an older man. Now go down to verse 20. As for those who persist in sin, rebuke them. What does NIV say in those two places? Okay. Reprove is the word they use. Yeah. NET, it uses the same word twice, right? NIV takes rebuke and adds harshly. And that actually gets it right. Because there's the word rebuke's all over the Bible, right? But this word for rebuke in the Greek, this is the only place in 5:1 that it shows up. And this kind of rebuke it meant to inflict blows upon. You get it? You with me? That means beating people up. You come in swinging. Yeah. So that's why the NIV says, don't rebuke harshly. And here's where we have to be careful. We have to understand what's going on here, because we could go, hey, I'm older than you, and the Bible says, get back, don't rebuke me. It says right there. What's the instruction to Timothy? It's not to not rebuke. What's the instruction? Be careful how you do it. Right? Yeah. How many times in the Bible, over and over, we're told to do things gently? And we live in a culture that we kind of go, hey, he got in a good punch. We kind of like that. And I like the context that he puts this in. Don't rebuke an older man, but encourage him as you would a father. Younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters in all impurity. because you're a leader, because you have some power, does that mean you can just go sling it around however you want? Well, you can. But it's not very pretty. It's probably not going to accomplish what you want, right? Anytime you force somebody to do something, they may be compliant on the outside, but they're also thinking about how they may not comply on the inside, right? You know, the little boy standing up in church and his mom keeps pushing him down, and he turns to her and says, sitting down on the outside, but I'm standing up on the inside. Right? We're like that. Yes, Andy? Yeah. Okay. So what do you like about the terminology he uses here to start off chapter 5? What does it evoke? What do we think about? What single term would you put on there? Gentleness. I like it. What else? Respect. I like it. Who do we correct? The Bible tells us. Yeah. The guy who keeps sinning. And why do we keep rebuking them? Father disciplines a child that he loves. I don't think it's an accident that Paul here puts it in the context of family, right? Because that's what family does. Even when it's hard, we keep coming back. Now, that's not to say every father, brother, mother, sister does things, every family does things like they should, right? But we can still uphold the ideal, right? Ideally, when we say we're a church family, we're not just saying words, right? That's something that we mean. And just to drive this point further, so we noticed in 1 Timothy 5:20, when we get to that, he's going to use this word rebuke there. And another place that Paul uses it in a similar way to 5:20 is in Titus 2, verse 15. He tells Titus, declare these things, exhort and rebuke with all authority. So there's an authority that comes in rebuking. And in Titus 2:15 and 1 Timothy 5:20, they're the same two words. And the sense is it's to refute or not so much strike against like the first word was. And he said, don't do that. But it doesn't mean nothing matters. We just let everything go because they're my father, mother, sister, brother, then I can't say anything to them. Right? There is a refuting when things are wrong. And you probably noticed most people in our families have a lot of wrong thinking, according to us, right? So I think it's interesting, he's not, because he comes back so quickly and says that yes, of course, you're supposed, those that are in sin, you say that. But how are you going to do it? You're going to be the example. You're going to do it in gentleness, kindness, loving, with respect. Even when somebody's wrong, Even if you disagree with them and think they're totally wrong, does that give us permission to disrespect them? Doesn't mean we can't be firm. Without going into all the details, because they're boring, with one of the organizations I worked with, there was a guy who wanted to be on our board, but go to a different convention. And we said, no, we're not going to do that. We didn't want to make the decision for him. You either come to our convention and be part of this board, that's great, or you leave our board and you go be part of the other one, right? But just because you moved and the church you go to goes to the other one, doesn't mean you get to do both. And I don't know everything about how this came about, but here's what gentleness looked like in that case. We spent 45 minutes of a meeting just saying, no, we can't do that. And we talked through the pros and cons, and I don't know how many times we did that. But we weren't going to tell him. We weren't going to force him. And finally, after 45 minutes, it would have been nice if it would have been shorter, but after 45 minutes, he decided, I think I'm going to go with my family. And we're like, great, we can support that. We think that's a wonderful idea. Sometimes we want to be efficient and quick, and sometimes people need 45 minutes of talking it out. Right? Yeah. Yeah. There's actually two different LTCs, but one in Tulsa, one in Dallas. It's just hard to be in those two places at the same time. Yeah. So here's my question. We'll stop here and we'll start with widows next week. We didn't get very, sorry, Kaylee, we didn't get very far in chapter 5, just 2 verses here. For what purpose is Paul telling Timothy these things? If we pretend Larry's Bible's right and that very first sentence is about the things that come after, command and teach these things. Why is Paul giving this instruction to Timothy? Why does he, what's the purpose in telling Timothy, do not rebuke an older man? Well, one, it's not a good idea, but is there more to this? Why would you need the instruction? Yeah, it's still not a good idea even now, right? Yeah. So, yeah. So is he telling Timothy this because he had some missteps doing this? Or is he, and I don't know, I don't have the answer. Or is he being preemptive? Is he leaning in the fact, I get that you're younger, and you're going to have to, because I think as we get down to the last part of this chapter, there's some big problems with some of the older men in the church. Some of the elders even in the church. And Timothy's going to have to address that. Is this preemptive? Because he knows he's going to have to fit that? do these things, or is it because it's already been an issue? We don't think of Bible people like that, right? Because if you're in the Bible, what does it mean? Yeah, you're perfect. You got everything right. You know what you're doing. He's got a gift. It could be. Is Paul talking about himself? That's a good point, Larry. Thank you. We don't know, but it is helpful to go, there is something here. Whether it's cultural or personal or biographical to Paul, there's something going on here. We're glad you're here. We'll start with widows. I expect everyone to bring a widow next week. Sorry. That was rude.